Now, there is no doubt about it that Snow White 2025 is considered by far one of the worst box office failures, not just with Disney, but also in the entire film history when it comes down to live-action remakes. We already know that it's right up there with, of course, Dragon Ball Evolution on the IMDb rating score.
Have you ever heard of a classic Disney princess movie so laden with controversies and disputes that it leaves fans wondering whether it will even see the light of day? That's the predicament Disney's upcoming live-action remake of Snow White has found itself in. A tangled web of tension, reshoots, and an ever-growing rumor mill. What was once envisioned as a triumphant reimagining of a beloved fairy tale has instead become the talk of Hollywood for all the wrong reasons. And the most startling part? Some sources claim Disney might be so uneasy about public backlash that they're considering whether this film should even appear on Disney+.
Through this, right? Oh, there's no prince. Woman doesn't need a prince.
Oh, Lord.
Really? Okay, good luck back then.
From its first announcement, Snow White 2025 seemed destined to stir conversation. A modernized princess, a stacked cast that includes the relatively fresh-faced Rachel Zegler and the high-profile Gal Gadot, and a storyline allegedly updated for a new generation. But excitement quickly gave way to skepticism and, soon after, outright hostility.
Doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
In place of a heartwarming tale, we have swirling accounts of behind-the-scenes showdowns, repeated script overhauls, and a brewing storm that shows no sign of letting up. Still, is all this chatter based on genuine fiascos, or is it an echo chamber fueled by internet speculation? Disney itself has been cagey, doing little to quell the uproar. Insiders paint a troubling picture, while fans on social media alternate between calling the project boldly progressive and labeling it an insult to a timeless classic. Before you dismiss it as just another case of internet drama, remember, few Disney properties carry as much weight as Snow White. She's the princess who started it all back in 1937. If even that legacy isn't safe from modern controversies, then maybe no fairy tale is. But that's not the whole story. Behind the murmurs of bad press lies a deeper tale of warring creative visions, personal rivalries, and a studio racing against time to salvage what was once a dream project. Could it be that the most shocking drama surrounding Snow White has nothing to do with wicked queens or enchanted forests, but everything to do with corporate missteps and clashing egos? Let's step into the heart of the chaos.
To go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control over that.
Word of trouble brewing came almost as soon as Disney revealed they'd be giving Snow White a live-action makeover. Traditionalists were apprehensive from the jump, fearing the essence of the original story, complete with its classic songs, gentle heroine, and true love's kiss, would be lost. Then came hints that the new version would radically reshape the story, aiming to make Snow White more independent and modern. That might not seem so bad on paper, but it fueled a fierce online debate. Were we about to witness a thoughtful update, or was Disney meddling for the sake of novelty? Into this heated environment stepped Rachel Zegler, catapulted to fame by her performance in West Side Story. She was cast as Snow White, a move initially celebrated by some fans eager to see fresh talent in a major Disney role. But her public remarks soon triggered a wave of criticism. In interviews, she described the 1937 original as outdated and implied that her version would correct those perceived flaws. For die-hard Disney devotees who revere the original as untouchable, those words sounded like blasphemy. Overnight, message boards and social media lit up with outrage, ridiculing the notion that a then-teen actress could dismiss a beloved classic so casually.
This girl took the money and then decided that she wanted to go out there and, you know what, I'm going to take my stand. Well, you should have made that stand before you took the money to promote a film, because that's not in line with your job description.
Right.
It wasn't just hardcore fans who raised eyebrows. Various film commentators began digging up every new snippet they could about the production, discovering that the film was already riddled with creative disagreements. Despite Disney's best attempts to contain the fallout, negative buzz spread rapidly. Soon, rumors circulated that the tension on set was far worse than typical Hollywood friction. Some even claimed the script had turned into a patchwork of conflicting ideas. But the tipping point arrived when speculation about wokeness overshadowed everything else.
I think this is their policies coming back to bite them. They went woke.
Yeah.
She went out and said stuff woke that was going to hurt the film. They couldn't come out and go against her, because then you're going after somebody for saying what you say you believe.
Some corners of the internet labeled the adaptation an attempt to lecture audiences rather than enchant them. Others defended the studio's goal to modernize the story and move away from outdated tropes. Whatever the stance, it was clear that Snow White 2025 had become something more volatile than a mere remake.
But at the same time, like, I think going forward, they're going to be like, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
Tight-lipped. Otherwise, guess what? We're clawing back some money.
Yeah. This would have been a lot better if they, had a strong male along with her, a prince, if it wasn't about socialism.
It was now a cultural lightning rod, and if you think that's the worst it got, you'd be mistaken. Because behind the scenes, Disney's leadership was reportedly fighting a battle on multiple fronts, trying to keep the film afloat while also grappling with a bigger question. Could the movie's release become a liability?
I think they could have done all that woke shit. You want to call woke? They could have done all that still. And as long as she had gone out and been like, well, we just have a different story. I like the old story, but we're doing a different one this time.
You're probably right.
The backlash would have been 10 times.
Yes. You're probably right.
When talk of infighting on set reached the public, details about repeated reshoots emerged. Multiple entertainment outlets cited unnamed insiders who claimed the production was a revolving door of script pages, last-minute changes, and overworked cast and crew. The main culprit? A storyline that refused to click, while Snow White 2025 was meant to highlight updated social messages and a proactive heroine. Each rewrite apparently led to new pacing issues and convoluted subplots that no one could fully untangle. Rumor has it that Greta Gerwig, known for her sharp writing and distinct directorial style, was brought in at one point to help refine the screenplay. Fans greeted that news with cautious optimism. Gerwig had proven she could reimagine classic tales, as seen with her adaptation of Little Women. But even she reportedly found the process maddening. Disney executives wanted to preserve enough of the original magic to keep older fans satisfied while injecting a bold spin that would appeal to modern viewers. Balancing those contradictory objectives isn't easy, especially under constant scrutiny. Though reshoots are hardly rare in Hollywood, 3 major rounds suggested deeper problems. The second set was allegedly about fixing pacing, shifting where certain musical numbers fell, and cutting scenes that tested poorly with early audiences. The third aimed to salvage the film's final act, rumored to feature an elaborate showdown in the evil Queen's lair. By then, cast morale was said to be at an all-time low, with some actors privately joking that the real story was happening off-camera, not in front of it. Each revision also meant more money and time spent on a project increasingly viewed as a risky gamble. Disney, for its part, tried to keep a lid on the rumors, but that became nearly impossible once some staffers began voicing their frustrations to outside sources. According to these accounts, the environment on set felt less like a creative collaboration and more like a crisis management scenario where everyone was trying to plug leaks in a sinking ship.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
But that wasn't all. The biggest source of unrest seemed to lie with the movie's 2 headlining stars, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, whose on-screen rivalry as heroine and villain allegedly bled into real life. Disney likely hoped that the casting of Gal Gadot as the evil queen would bring box office appeal and star power. Known for iconic roles in blockbuster franchises, Gadot was a proven draw. Rachel Zegler, on the other hand, was a rising newcomer, a performer still in the early stages of her career, but brimming with potential. On paper, the pairing looked promising. A seasoned star opposite a fresh-faced talent, generating excitement for a new spin on an old fairy tale. That honeymoon phase didn't last. Whispers of friction began circulating once Zegler's interviews questioning the original film's relevance made headlines. While Gadot didn't publicly criticize her co-star's comments, rumors hinted that she was concerned about how these statements might affect the film's public image. After all, if fans were already bristling at Zegler's remarks, how would that impact the entire production? On set, tensions reportedly flared for other reasons. In the film's climactic third act, where Snow White and the evil queen finally face off, Gadot tried improvising some lines to give her character a darker edge. Directors and writers apparently approved, believing it gave the villain an intriguing twist. But Zegler was allegedly unsettled by these improvised scenes, feeling they drew attention away from Snow White's moment of triumph. The word eroded popped up in insider accounts, describing how she felt about the heroine's emotional arc being overshadowed. Accounts also point to behind-the-scenes blow-ups, where retakes were stalled or scrapped because neither actress could agree on how the confrontation should be played. Crew members recall nights of filming that stretched into the early hours.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco, Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru for Rachel Zegler.
With tension that anyone could feel even if they weren't privy to the specifics of the disagreement. In some cases, entire sequences, costly ones at that, ended up on the cutting room floor after test audiences found them disjointed or unconvincing.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
By the time the dust settled, everyone was walking on eggshells. The two leads weren't openly trading barbs in public, but their distance at promotional events and the abrupt cancellation of a planned UK premiere spoke volumes. Fans couldn't help but suspect that the supposed animosity might tank the film before it even had a chance to prove itself. As one commentator put it, when your two leads can't stand being in the same room, what chance does the movie have?
In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
And as if internal strife wasn't enough, a bigger question loomed. Would Snow White, 2025, even end up on Disney's own streaming platform? In the current era of streaming dominance, one would assume that any new Disney film, especially one featuring such a cornerstone princess, would automatically land on Disney+. Yet rumors swirled that Snow White, 2025, might face a fate more severe than a delayed release. Complete exclusion, at least for the immediate future. The idea alone was shocking. Why would Disney, of all companies, keep a high-profile project off its signature platform? Some say the studio worries the film is now such a lightning rod of bad press. It might drag down the entire Disney brand on the streaming service. Subscribers usually log in expecting family-friendly content anchored in feel-good nostalgia. The last thing Disney needs is a wave of negative headlines overshadowing their carefully curated library. If Snow White, 2025 bombs at the box office or continues to attract controversy, placing it on Disney Plus could amplify the blowback rather than contain it.
It basically, this movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism.
From a financial angle, the studio has already poured millions into reshoots, a robust marketing campaign, and star salaries. Relegating such a significant project to streaming without recouping costs in theaters might be too risky. Conversely, if the theatrical run is disastrous, that might discourage them from making it easily accessible on Disney+, at least until the chatter calms down. Then, there's Rachel Zegler's reported response, one of disbelief and indignation. She was initially excited to be launched into Disney's live-action pantheon. Can you imagine the frustration if that platform turns its back on the film? Insiders suggest she sees it as a betrayal of the cast's hard work, a move that would confirm to the world that even Disney has lost faith in the movie. If you think this all sounds too dramatic for a production about a fairy tale princess, you're not alone. Yet, here we are, with a mega company possibly deciding that the safest strategy is to avoid having Snow White, 2025, side by side with Disney's more celebrated releases. But the deeper question is, how did it get this far? Disney's live-action remakes are hardly a novelty anymore. Many of their classics, from Beauty and the Beast to The Lion King, have received the big-budget treatment. Despite mixed reviews, most of these reimaginings were financially successful, appealing to nostalgia while introducing some new elements. Snow White should have been the crown jewel, representing the origin of Disney's fairy tale empire. If there was ever a sure bet, it should have been this. Instead, it's teetering on the edge of a PR meltdown. The implications stretch beyond the fate of a single film. Disney's strategy of reinventing their animated properties relies on maintaining goodwill among audiences who treasure these stories. If Snow White, 2025, not only disappoints but becomes a cautionary tale of how not to handle a remake, the ripple effect could discourage future ventures or, at the very least, make the studio more skittish. We might see the end of certain live-action adaptations if executives believe they'll trigger more controversy than profit. Moreover, the script changes and controversies reflect a broader dilemma. How much can you update a classic before it stops being that classic? Disney is in a tough spot.
But it's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
One group of fans demands modernity, inclusivity, and a strong, independent princess who doesn't need a prince. Another group insists that tampering with the original's timeless innocence veers into disrespect and revisionist territory. In chasing both demographics, the final product might please no one.
Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, nope, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
Some critics argue that Disney should have set a definitive vision from the start. Either faithfully recreate the beloved tale, or do something entirely fresh. By hovering in between, they invite endless debate and constant rewriting. And the public's appetite for drama only grows with each leaked story. Meanwhile, the brand that used to represent happily ever after now faces fresh turmoil, from Twitter arguments to mainstream news headlines. But the uncertainty doesn't stop here. Behind the scenes, last-minute changes can still happen, including reshoots meant to salvage the final product. That leads us to the swirling talk of test screenings, more potential delays, and an ever-intensifying media storm. Will the final cut of Snow White 2025 redeem itself in the eyes of skeptics, or is the damage beyond repair? Some believe test screenings might be the film's last chance to win over naysayers. A handful of carefully orchestrated showings could generate positive buzz if the reworked story clicks. If that scenario comes to pass, Disney might change course, embracing the streaming release after a decent box office run. With the negative press overshadowed by fresh word of mouth, Rachel Zegler's performance could emerge as a highlight, and the film might earn a second life on Disney+. On the flip side, if insiders are correct about the final product being choppy, inconsistent, or weighed down by ill-conceived social commentary, no test screening can save it. Critics will pounce, fans will vent, and the film risks becoming an internet punching bag for everything people feel Disney is doing wrong. In that scenario, perhaps the only option is for Disney to quietly push the film into theaters, hope it does moderate business, and then bury it in the vast streaming catalog with minimal promotion. The swirling drama has also magnified the alleged rivalry between Zegler and Godot. Entertainment pages run with headlines like, "Can the two stars even tolerate each other?" fueling interest in whether the rumored backstage quarrels represent deeper creative clashes or mere personality conflicts blown out of proportion. Neither actress to date has made an official statement clarifying the situation, perhaps on strict instructions from Disney's PR teams. The cancellation of the UK premiere, though, seems to confirm a reluctance to put them in the same spotlight. Fans remain divided. Some cling to optimism, hoping their favorite princess gets the retelling she deserves. Others anticipate a train wreck, watching each new rumor for signs that the meltdown is complete. In the middle stands Disney, attempting to shield a historically significant property from further controversy, while also grappling with the business reality of recouping production and marketing costs. But there's one question that still lingers. After this much controversy, what kind of conclusion can possibly wrap this all up? When you consider everything that has happened, from Rachel Zegler's polarizing remarks to the possibility that Disney might keep this film off its streaming platform, the story of Snow White 2025 feels far grander than any typical Hollywood mishap. It's a microcosm of our larger cultural battles. Classic versus modern, tradition versus innovation, public perception versus corporate ambitions. The stakes couldn't be higher for a studio that built its empire on fairy tales and happy endings. Yet the final chapters remain unwritten. If the movie somehow triumphs, if critics find it more cohesive than expected, if audiences warm to the updated themes, if the chemistry between Zegler and Godot surprises everyone, then Snow White 2025 could transform from disaster in the making to unexpected success. In that best-case scenario, the film might reaffirm Disney's knack for reinventing the wheel, and Rachel Zegler could walk away with her reputation intact or even enhanced. But if the film stumbles, it won't just be another box office flop, It would stand as a symbol of how creative indecision, combative personalities, and constant rewrites can sabotage even the most beloved properties. It would remind audiences that no fairy tale, however iconic, is immune to modern controversies. And in the aftermath, we might see Disney reevaluate how they approach their classic catalog, potentially shelving any idea that old stories can be turned on their head without risking the goodwill that has kept them beloved for decades. At present, the swirling rumors suggest the path is still uncertain. Maybe Disney is holding out hope that they can salvage the film. Or maybe behind closed doors, they've already decided this adaptation is too risky for a full-fledged streaming spotlight. From a viewer's perspective, it's a waiting game to see whether Snow White 2025 will be quietly released, controversially pulled, or eventually find itself on Disney Plus after a tepid theatrical run. In the end, the real question might be, how do we, as an audience, judge this movie? Will it be weighed down by the controversies swirling around it, or can it stand on its own merits? Perhaps only time will tell. Regardless, Snow White 2025 has already carved a place in Hollywood lore, even before its official release, proving that the greatest conflicts aren't always between princesses and evil queens, but often among the people who bring those stories to life. It might shock everyone if the film defies expectations and emerges with glowing reviews. Or it could leave Disney, plus the rest of the industry, reeling as they analyze how such a storied character could lead to such a chaotic production. Until then, one thing is certain. This is one fairy tale adaptation that won't be forgotten anytime soon. Keep your eyes and ears open. Something tells me this saga is far from over.